Hello everyone, so we're going to stream this video in the Super GT style, as my video last night got knocked off because of YouTube claim. So anyway, we were in the FIA races. I'd been away for 2 weeks. I'd qualified second, not the fastest lap time. I did this race twice last night, and the second time was much better in terms of the qualifying, but this race is much more fun to watch. So I'm here against Zimmy 58. And the race turned out to be pretty fun. Starting P2 in this race is actually much better. The strategy is pretty linear. It's you start on the racing softs, you go for one stopper, and you go, and during this pit stop you stick with the soft tires. So you get a big slipstream down into the first chicane, which is usually the second chicane, but we're running the track without the chicane here at Monza. And grab the lead through Curva Grande, pretty smooth and easy. And then from here, I just wanted to manage the tires. This car tends to understeer quite a lot. So even though you have a lot of tire wear at the rear as well, you want to look after the front as much as you can. So I wasn't pushing too hard, and I was trying to minimize my mistakes. But overall, this car is really fun to drive. I'd driven it already in the daily race at Le Mans, not knowing that it was in the FIA race because I hadn't been around to practice, and really enjoyed it, but also learned a little bit about these tires and the nature of the car. So very minimal practice was put into this, but I think that was part of the fun of doing this race. I wasn't going to do any FIA races as I'd just gotten back from holiday. So anyway, we're on to lap 2. Zimmy 58 is still relatively close. And I continue to pull away a little bit, but going into this lap I do make a small mistake, which allows him to catch up. So braking for this chicane here, this is Variante Roger. You want to try and get on the curb there as early as you can. I kind of missed the apex slightly, but that was okay. However, in going into Lesmo 1, even in real life, I tend to struggle a little bit with this corner. I understeer wide and get a little bit of gravel, which creates a bit of oversteer. Then on the second Lesmo, I had to take a little bit easy because I didn't want to make that same mistake twice. So this allows me to catch up a little bit. And now the race is on. So with that little mistake, instead of pulling away and let's say doing 1 minute 22, I'm now stuck in 1 minute 23s. And based on the lap times I saw of the other pro guys last night, 22 seemed to be the pace. But again, I was trying to look after these front tires, so I wasn't pushing as hard as I probably could, but I didn't know that I could go much quicker than a 22.9, as I did do some practice before this race in an open lobby. However, I'm not convinced that they had the right tire settings. So the slipstream in this car is actually not that effective outside of 0.6 of a second. Zimmy is close-ish, but not close enough. Through Curva Grande, I take quite a tight line. Everyone else goes from wide and turns in, but in my opinion, this doesn't help as much. The car has got so much grip that you can stick to the outside, to the inside, without scrubbing off much speed. So this saves me in terms of them catching my slipstream in any way, and I continue to do that line throughout the whole race. Also in this car, if you slipstream for too long and hit the rev limiter, you lose a lot of pace. You've got to judge it quite well. This lap was pretty smooth, no mistakes, and just sort of now thinking about the pit stop, which was at the end of lap 5. So you do a short stint at the front and then avoid the undercut in order to maintain the lead. However, going into lap 4, things do change up a little bit. So just going through Parabolica, trying to minimize the understeer, getting on the power as soon as possible, and then cutting across the start finish line on the inside, and then staying here down the main straight. This track without the chicane is used in real life, but just for testing. The LMP1 cars come here and they remove the first chicane to do some high-speed testing. I know Rene Rust and he was telling me that in the Audi LMP1 days, when they were testing, they could take Curva Grande easy flat. So I make a mistake there into Roger. I misjudged my braking. I braked on the new tire line as opposed to the used tire marker. Cost me a lot of speed, and now P2 is right behind me, as you can see here. So we're exiting Lesmo 2. He's now firmly in my slipstream, and I can pretty much assume that he's going to overtake me on lap 5. But I'm not panicking because I did anticipate this, and I just figured to myself, okay, he can lead for 1 lap, we're going to pit anyway, and from after the pit stop I'm going to have to attack. So I'm not going to defend a lot here. I won't make it too easy, but not too hard either. Cleverly, he doesn't overtake me into Parabolica, because that will mean that I would just slipstream past him onto the main straight. So into Parabolica, I overslowed the car a little bit to try and avoid him getting a big run on me, but that didn't really work. The slipstream was strong enough that even though he was so close, he could get a good run. He goes towards the outside, I stay to the inside, sticking to my normal Curva Grande line, and he gets through. I tuck back into his slipstream and think about a move into Roger, but again, there is no point. I can follow him now. The point is to win the race and not the corner. So he does make a mistake, and I attempt to cut back, but I misjudge it slightly as he's going so slowly into the second part of the chicane that I actually nudge him and get a small SR points penalty. So now I resign myself to the fact that I'm in P2. The attempt on the cutback didn't work, even though I wasn't going to overtake on this lap, and now we just aim for the pit stop. So heading now to Ascari. You want to actually overslow the car here because you want to get on the power as soon as you can, so don't do that. You want to actually carry as little speed as possible into the left-hander so you can get on the power full gas through the right-hander and then through the left-hander onto the back straight, heading towards Parabolica. Heading now towards the pits, braking at about 85 meters, keeping as tight a line as possible on these used tires so that you get on the power as soon as you can without risking getting snap oversteer to the edge of the track. Bombing into the pit lane. I do wish that Gran Turismo would let us brake for the line. Here's my Rinaldi pit crew in the accurate team wear, doing a fantastic job in our one-off appearance at this LMP1 race from the 1990s at Monza. So tire change here was perfect. We're back on the softs, and now it's a matter of trying to stick with Zimmy 58 and seeing if I can get him at the next round and overtake him on the main straight. So no mistakes here, braking relatively early for the first chicane. I wanted to hit every single apex here, maximize my traction, make sure I'm using the most of the new tire, and just trying to avoid mistakes basically. So not using all of the track in Lesmo 1 and probably the same in Lesmo 2. I just wanted to try and be as patient as possible. When you're in the slipstream in these cars, there is quite a bit of, the understeer is increased, but overall it's okay. I didn't like that Zimmy was weaving around the track GP2 style. They do that a lot in GP3, GP2, but you know, if you're watching that on TV, that's the style you're going to copy. So I completely understand what he's doing there. I just, when I'm leading, I try and avoid that. So I attempt a move here, but my exit run out of Parabolica was not as good as his. He gets a small slipstream from the guy in front who is heading into the pit lane, which means I can't quite catch him on this lap. Oh, sorry, on this straight and get a good run. So you only want to overtake on the straights here. The braking for these cars is so marginal that there's a threat to running wide. I try a move there on Curva Grande on the inside, a fake move, but I didn't anticipate that when you lift off the throttle here, you get so much step oversteer. So I do make a mistake there into Roger and nudge the guy. Felt bad about that. He braked a little bit earlier than I anticipated, and I probably braked a little bit too late. I was probably too fixated on his rear end, and in the end I nudge him a little bit. So now I wanted to stay as close as I can, given that when I exited Parabolic on this lap, a previous lap, I wasn't close enough. So I figured, okay, I need to push a little bit more to get the run. Going into Lesmo, staying as close as I can and getting a good run towards Parabolica. Now I'm already in his slipstream, but on this part of the track it really makes no difference. The point is you got to brake as smooth as you can into Parabolic and get on the power as early as you can. So tight line, tight apex really helps, allows you to get on the power pretty early so that you don't get the snap oversteer towards the exit of the corner. And now it's a matter of just trusting that when I do get close to him, he's not going to weave into me, because I didn't like that weaving, as I mentioned. Nice easy pass towards Curva Grande on the line that I like, but I do lean on him a little bit there. And now hoping not to make another mistake into the Roger chicane. Braking just before the 150, clipping the apex. You would like to get on the inside of that curb, but I suppose if you can say that if we're driving, if it's real life, you wouldn't touch those curbs. They are deadly in real life. So the game is a little bit too soft on those curbs there. If you ride them in real life, if you go over them, you're going to damage the underfloor of your car and your team will not be impressed. So Zumi is still behind me. He's very close. I'm now trying to be as smooth as I can again. I've calmed down a little bit, being that this was my first race of the year, having been away for a while. I still get a little bit nervous, which is, I like that. It keeps me sharp and allows me to simulate certain aspects of myself for real life racing, which is one of the big reasons why I play sim racing. It's not just about racing lines and braking points, because those aren't entirely accurate in the games, but if you take it seriously enough, you can learn a lot about yourself and how to manage that when you go to real races. So Zimi is right there. I move to the middle of the track and I give him as little space as possible on the outside of Curva Grande and try to defend myself going into the Roger chicane. Obviously in the replay it shows that he hit me, but that is not the case. He was actually much more gentlemanly than I was. So exiting Lesmo 1, he makes a small mistake. He gets the understeer that I was talking about, and that gives me a little bit of a gap. So I'm just trying to get over the half-second mark, as that seems to be the slipstream zone. Sometimes in other races, if you're within 1 second, you get the slipstream. So that to me is not realistic. Usually in real life, you have to be quite close to the guy in front to really benefit. So this seemed a little bit more accurate to me in this race, which I quite enjoyed. Starting to pull away slightly now. I did a pretty smooth lap on this one, no mistakes. The tyre wear is starting to fall away. I did wish at this point that I'd done a little bit more practice to understand what the tyres were capable of on these last 2 laps, but so far so good. The tyres are going a little bit, and it's just about braking a little bit earlier for each chicane, and the Lesmo is anticipating the understeer a little bit more. My brake balance was 3 to the rear, so in this game that's +3. Still, it's a wonder to me why they use pluses for the rear bias and negatives for the front. Missing the apex there again, that's a shame. In practice I was managing to get over the curb, which gives you a much better ability to get on the power early for the second phase of that corner. What's cool is that in real life now they've updated the curbs on the exit of the Lesmos and Ascari, and it makes it much more fun. You can actually see that on another video that I have, which is my Monza overtakes in the GT Open in real life. So I did do this race again after this round, just to see if I could improve my overall lap time, which actually wasn't the case. But it was interesting to see that the top A+ and S rank guys like Tijni and TRL AUG and Key 25, they were managing to stay in the 22s. I do think that if I'd done this race again in a higher group, I think I would have been able to push a little bit harder and stay in the 22s. I did stay in the 22s when I was in a lobby, and that seemed to be the potential. But the aim of any race that you do is just to try and win the race. It's not always necessarily just to do the best lap times or anything. You've got to race to the people around you, and I learned this from Blancpain when first I was an AM driver in the AM category and then in the Pro AM category. You got to ignore the lap times of the pros or any other class around you and try and win your race. So that means driving to the pace of the people around you to avoid mistakes and stay on the racetrack. And that generally, in my experience, has yielded my best results. So onto the final lap here. Everything is going smoothly after the pit stop, and we are now pulling away. Zibby did actually make a small mistake again in the Lesmos, and then exiting the Scari chicane here, he ran just a little bit too wide and picked up a small penalty, which was a shame for him. The guy is driving really well. I raced him again in the next race, and he didn't have a great qualifying, but he managed to catch me. He managed to climb up to P2 and catch me just before the last lap. He was within about 3 seconds, which was pretty respectable. So I crossed the line here in first place, winning my first FIA race of the year. Hoping to get now into the A+ rankings, driver rankings, and hopefully racing some of the top guys going forward. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching. Looking forward to creating more videos this year. Please share it with your mates and subscribe or like the video if you enjoyed it. Catch you in the next one.